professional astronomer in Canada at the time, Clarence Chant, gave a public lecture on the campus of the University of Toronto, just like I'm doing tonight. And in the audience was an astronomy fan, David Dunlap. And he loved what Professor Chant had to say, and he had lots of questions for him afterwards, and they struck up a friendship. And over the next few years, David Dunlap and Clarence Chant began to have a conversation about how David Dunlap, who was quite a wealthy man, might be able to put Canadian astronomy on the map. Unfortunately, a few years later, David Dunlap passed away, but his widow, recognising the friendship that he had with Professor Chant and recognising his passion for astronomy, made a very large gift to the university of a block of land in the middle of nowhere. It was in the middle of nowhere back in the 1920s, and money to build an observatory and a telescope. And by 1935, the David Dunlap Observatory opened. At the time, it was the second biggest telescope in the world. It was a very remote, dark site, Richmond Hill. And over the next 60 or 70 years, it made many of the key discoveries in astrophysics. And so it put Toronto on the map as far as astronomy goes. And if you talk to anyone of my age or older who is a professional astronomer, they will have used that telescope and come through U of T as part of their training. Now, of course, by the 1990s and 2000s, it was now quite a small telescope by world standards, and Richmond Hill was no longer a dark site. And so conversations began with the university and the Dunlap family as to what the next steps might be. And after a long period of negotiations with the family, with the university, and with the city of Richmond Hill, there was a decision to sell the telescope and the land to developers. That resulted in a very large sum of money coming back to the university, and they invested that money back into a permanent endowment which now funds the Dunlap Institute for Astronomy and Astrophysics. So we now have nothing to do with the David Dunlap Observatory, although we're thrilled to hear that the RASC has everything to do with the David Dunlap Observatory now, and that the observatory is in good hands. But the Dunlap Institute is on St. George campus, and we have 3 missions to find new groundbreaking ways of studying the universe by building clever equipment and making amazing discoveries. We have a commitment to training the next generation, teaching them the tools of the trade, how to write software, build hardware, teach courses, write job applications, do research. And then our third one, which I would like to make even more important than it is now, is to foster the public engagement of science. What this sort of activity that I'm doing right now with you is just one tiny part of that. Most of you are already convinced that science is worth doing and that astronomy is worth doing. And if you're not, then please stay for the next hour or so. But there's a lot of people out there who either don't understand science, or it's a bit scary, or they actually think science isn't an important thing. And we have an actual mandate to show them why science, whether it's curing cancer or studying the stars, is important and something that every advanced society should have a key part of what they do. So I still think that even though we've come a long way from that telescope in Richmond Hill, and we've come a long way from that public lecture that Clarence Chant gave in 1919, we are still doing exactly what Professor Chant and Mr. Dunlap envisaged all those years ago. So we have a lot of our own outreach activities. Some we do in partnership with RASC and some on our own. If you look up the Dunlap Institute in your favourite electronic means, our website, our Facebook page, our Twitter account, you can find lots of information about what we do. In particular, from our webpage, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, Event Horizon, which lists all the different talks and activities and planetarium shows and other events that are going on throughout the Greater Toronto area. One upcoming event that I particularly want to highlight, and I think it's the RASC is running the show here, but we're very excited to be a part of it, is that on Saturday the 13th of June, we're all celebrating the 80th anniversary of the David Dunlap Observatory. So there's a whole day of activities, 9 to 5. There'll be talks from people about the history of the observatory and some of its great discoveries, about some of the amazing artifacts and pieces of historical equipment that we've found as we've been refurbishing the observatory, and I'll be talking about the future. And there'll be all sorts of interactive activities and looking at the sun and all the rest of it. So keep an eye out for more information. Is this information the RAC will be distributing? Oh.
I've assumed so.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, the 80th anniversary is coming up in Richmond Hill on June the 13th, the That's the Saturday, it's the second Saturday. So come along. I'll be speaking, a whole bunch of other people will be speaking. The Dunlap family will be there. It'll be a great chance to reflect on everything that's been achieved and where we're going in the future. Alright, so let's move on to my talk. I'm happy to take, if there's anything I say during my talk that doesn't make sense, or it's a bit confusing, or I went too fast, by all means interrupt me and I'll try and answer your question. If you've got any more general questions, I'm happy to take as many of those as you'd like, and we'll take those at the end. And if you're too shy to ask a question or you sort of think of it later, well, if you're on Twitter, you can send me a tweet and I'll get back to you later on. So, many of you have been to astronomy talks before, and the usual focus is, isn't the sky beautiful and wonderful and enchanting and mysterious and romantic? This isn't going to be one of those talks. As my title suggests, this is about how the universe is actually a violent, explosive, dramatic, deadly place. Now, when I was sitting out, Randy said, it's called How the Cosmos Might Kill You, isn't it? And I said, no, it's not might, it's will. So I don't want you to come away from this talk with a feeling that your time is ticking and we're all going to burn in flames within the next few days, but I do want you to come away with an appreciation of just how powerful and magnificent the universe is, and how perhaps insignificant and unimportant we are. And that's certainly the thing I enjoy most about astronomy, is that you cannot have an ego and be an astronomer, because the forces and sizes and scales and everything out there dwarfs everything you could ever imagine into insignificance. So let's start off with perhaps the most deadly phenomenon in the universe, one that will affect the health of many of the people in this room, and will have affected the healths and lives of many people that you know. And so this is the most dangerous thing in the universe, cosmic rays. Don't know if you've heard of them before, but the Earth is under attack right now from these subatomic bullets that we call cosmic rays. So what are they? Well, they're just protons, electrons, atoms, individual atomic particles that have travelled huge distances at essentially the speed of light. Now we can take subatomic particles and accelerate them up to almost the speed of light in facilities like the Large Hadron Collider underground in Switzerland. And that is the most expensive piece of equipment ever built. It costs billions and billions and billions of dollars. And with enormous amounts of work and electricity, we can get particles up to almost the speed of light. Well, somehow the universe, without building any accelerators or spending any money at all, can accelerate particles up to energies of millions and millions times higher than the Large Hadron Collider. So for example, people, when we were about to turn on the Large Hadron Collider for the first time, many people said, don't do it, it's going to create mini black holes and destroy the world. Well, as you all know, it didn't create mini black holes and destroy the world. And one of the reasons why we were very confident that would happen is because there are atomic collisions that are billions of times more energetic than anything that the Large Hadron Collider can achieve, happening in the atmosphere every second of every day. So this dwarfs the Large Hadron Collider significance. What's happening here is these bullets are traveling at these enormous speeds from very large distances. As this picture shows, some of them essentially shatter in the Earth's atmosphere and break up into particles. And if you look with particular types of cameras, you can actually see these flashes that last for a tiny fraction of a second, these little bursts of light as these cosmic rays disappear. But many of them make it to the ground. And so if you actually get out a Geiger counter right now, you will detect radiation,